Hello there, fellow zombie slayers. My name is Stanley557. Today, I want to take a critical and praiseworthy look at 9, one of the 4 maps released with the launch of Black Ops 4. Often contested with Ancient Evil as the game's best map, much like the debate between Black Ops 3's Shadows of Evil and Horizon 9 was curated to be the more casual experience of the 2 Chaos launch maps. And while I prefer Voyage of Despair in terms of subjective opinion, I consider 9 to be the objectively better of the 2 maps. So while I'm currently deciding between reviewing all of Cold War or all of Ghost's Extinction Mode, let's do a quick single map review of 9, one of Black Ops 4's objectively best maps.
Ancient Egypt.
Who's that, Mr. Peabody?
King Tut.
Much like how we start many of our previous reviews, what does Black Ops 4 do to set itself apart from other zombie outings? Well, in terms of gameplay, the overall experience is a mutated combination of class-based gameplay and customization. From the get-go, players are able to choose their starting weapon, lethal equipment, and elixir setup, much like World War II. Unlike World War II, however, we see the reintroduction of Black Ops 3's specialist weapon mechanic. In each of the Black Ops 3 experiences, players are able to complete a small quest line in order to obtain a map-specific specialist weapon. For example, the Ragnarok DG4s in Horizon. While in use, players will be able to use an infinite damage wonder weapon for 10 to 15 seconds. Once used, players must kill the undead to recharge the weapon's raw power. In Black Ops 4, however, players are able to choose one of the 4 specialist weapons to take with them in each map from round 1. As each weapon is used throughout the game, they gain experience, which allows them to unlock new abilities and attacks. Pulling out a specialist weapon will also release a concussive blast, despawning any standard zombie around the player and stunning stronger enemies. Players are also granted 2 extra hits while using the specialist weapon as an added bonus. While they all do infinite damage, each one is slightly curated to a specific playstyle. So let's go over the Chaos weapons specifically. The Staff of Ra has the ability to fire out a concentrated beam of the sun. This can both burn zombies and revive allies. Those revived will also keep their perks as an added bonus. Or you can simply spam both triggers and murder everything with an insanely broken melee attack. Fun fact, the beam can also heal health if used on an ally. My friend will never let me hear the end of this fact because it was something I didn't know when he first showed me. At level 2, the staff grants the player extra resistance to catalyst damage, and at level 3, the player can place down the staff to form a protective bubble. While inside, enemies will constantly take damage and become slowed, ally health will be restored quicker, and down teammates can crawl into the aura to be revived. The staff offers a ton of support utility never before seen in a Treyarch game, and it's perfect choice for team medics. Next up is the Viper and Dragon. Sporting a fiery shotgun and whip blade, the weapons can be used in harmony to deal constant damage to stronger enemies. At level 2, the weapon's rate of fire increases, and at level 3, the shotgun is able to shoot 4 volleys at the same time. And if the player presses both triggers at the same time, they'll be able to ensnare a normal zombie, turning them into a mini monkey bomb. Rhythm is the weapon's specialty, and will reward a patient player with pure power. Then there's the Chakrams of Vengeance. At level 1, players will be able to melee a few zombies at a time with one blade, and the second they can launch around the battlefield, causing further mayhem as the blade ricochets off further enemies, a lot like the Sen's Trident Wonder Weapon. At level 2, the player is granted a speed increase and a quicker rate of fire. And finally, at level 3, they'll be able to activate the Lacerating Whirlwind. Pressing both triggers at the same time, a whirlwind of blades will be summoned around the player, making them invincible to any standard enemy, and with the speed increase, players will be able to sow discord and destruction on the undead battlefield. Speed is the name of the game, and chakrams are perfect for speedrunners. And finally, there's the Hammer of Valhalla, arguably the easiest to understand. By simply pressing the right trigger, the player will be able to use the hammer's wide swing to pick off countless enemies. Even at level 1, it's easily the most powerful of the 4. Each enemy killed will also restore armor, making the player even more destructive. At level 2, players can press left trigger to summon a protective storm. A concussive slam will kill the enemies around them, and the storm will stun heavies and mini-bosses like the Blightfather. And finally, at level 3, the player will be able to shoot a bolt of lightning like Mjolnir. This instantly kills standard, vermin, and enhanced enemies, and heavy zombies are de-armored. If you're looking for power, then the hammer is a no-brainer. The specialist mechanic is what Black Ops 4 was built around, allowing players to cause mayhem from the get-go and kick off the game's momentum as early as round 3. This also allows Treyarch to throw special enemies at the player much earlier, as they'll always theoretically have the means to defeat them. Unlike the round 8 Panzer on Origins, which is a purposeful difficulty spike that can end games in seconds. And the final major change to Black Ops 4's setup is the perk process. In the menu, the player is able to augment each of the 4 perk statues around the map with one of Black Ops 4's 18 perks. These range from returning ones like Stamina Up to new ones like Stone Cold Stronghold, which grant players armor as long as they stand still. And depending on what perk the player has placed in the Odin statue, the specific perk will be granted an extra ability when the player purchases all of their remaining perks, further increasing variety and player choice. For example, normally, Time Slip decreases the time it takes for the box to get the player a weapon, the time it takes for Pack-a-Punch to upgrade the player's weapon, and the time it takes for the player's lethal equipment to be recharged. But once the player has bought all 4 of their perks, Time Slip will now also decrease the amount of kills it takes to charge up the specialist weapon. With so much creativity and player choice, these changes would obviously receive some criticism. New players are thrown way too much at their plate all at once, and it can feel quite overwhelming. I don't blame many players that they were turned off by all these features at launch. It's quite a stark contrast from nearly every other Zombies entry, unless you just came off the heels of World War II. The reason I bring up these changes in such an in-depth manner is because 9 is the only map in Black Ops 4 to organically integrate all of these features flawlessly into gameplay. So forgive me for being so thorough, even though we haven't even begun talking about the map yet. But with all of this customization, players are able to curate their Black Ops 4 experience to their liking. Sadly, players must commit to these choices once they enter the game, which ironically hurts the game's vision of creativity and player choice. But with all that out of the way, what's the story? Now, unlike every other retrospective, we're jumping right into map 3, so I'll provide a quick little overview, shall we? Scarlet Rhodes is on the hunt for her father, Alistair Rhodes, after he's been kidnapped by a cunning cult called the Order. And with the help of 3 of his most trusted allies, Scarlet and her team have managed to locate Alistair within the ancient city of Delphi. To access the site though, the group must inhale vapors to travel back in time and obtain the code needed to open the locked doorway to the once lost civilization. See, that wasn't so hard now, was it? Once back in time, our heroes arrive at the initiation of a Sentinel trial. Seemingly after the same thing, the Order initiates the trial to access the city too. Now our heroes are faced with an unending horde of the undead, as the crowd around us jeers for combat. The opening cutscene is easily one of the series' best. Not only is it not rendered in engine so it doesn't look awful, but the cinematography and music is nothing short of incredible. Nos Fideles, the track playing currently, does a great job to introduce players to the vibe of the map, and gets them pumped for the experience of a lifetime. With hardly any dialogue spoken, players are able to perceive our characters' thoughts, opinions, and actions. Bruno is apprehensive, Shaw is giddy with excitement, Scarlet is trying to remain calm and collected, and Diego is confident. And from his perspective, we are introduced to time travel and body swapping, adding on further layers of insanity and excitement. 9 is truly an experience like no other, and that was all in the intro cutscene and story. From round 1, players can hear the faint sounds of the cheering, and once they emerge from the tunnel, the map flares to life. And thus we've arrived at 9. Like a kid in the candy store, I can't quite decide what to review first, so let's go over the map's level design. Stuck in a massive arena, many players were initially worried that we would be confined to the pit in the center. But thankfully, the developers at Treyarch did an amazing job making the space feel very inviting. With the 4 towers that surround the map, players are guided to the Raw and Danu buildings, where the tower's wide design and multi-leveled structure provides a ton of play space to explore. Rooms are quite large and guide players effortlessly to wall buys, perks, and further exploration. Each tower has its own color palette and vibe. The Danu Tower is covered in greens and blues. The top has a sprawling tree, and the bottom's luminescent water is beautiful. Raw is plastered with gold and orange highlights, with each floor having its own centerpiece. The top sports an obelisk, the middle an oasis, and the bottom a burial tomb. Zeus is consumed with white marble and purple and yellow detailing of a Greek amphitheater, with the bottom floor containing a bloodbath, and the middle and top floors sporting various Greek statues. And finally, Odin is a warm yellow and brown. The bottom floor houses a large burning cauldron, the middle an armory, and the top a Viking burial. Each tower could genuinely be the inspiration for its own map, yet Treyarch effortlessly curated these 4 themes into a Roman Colosseum. And in each tower lays a perk machine on the top floor. This design decision makes it incredibly easy for new players to locate, identify, and associate the new perk mechanics with the map's various set pieces. This intelligent design leads players through the play space without actually telling them, allowing them to feel accomplished when they stumble upon these statues, allowing exploration and excitement to take center stage again, something new players have always kind of struggled with in zombies. And for experienced players, this setup works incredibly well. The map seamlessly flows from one area to the other, especially in the underground, where each of the 4 areas is interconnected by underground catacombs. Once Pack-a-Punch is unlocked, players will then unlock further pathways to speed up the flow and pacing. Another cool nod is that the players are forced to travel through the map by going through the Danu and Ra Tower, only able to access Zeus and Odin initially from the underground catacombs. But once players reach the towers, they'll be able to access the doors that lead them back to spawn, bringing the map full circle in as little as 5 minutes. This is ingenious. This decision keeps the map contained and uses verticality as a means of map extension rather than length. It's an issue maps like Origins, Dead of the Night, and the recent Terra Modelica, I can't pronounce this, I don't know how to pronounce this, the Desolate Land, and the recent Desolate Land run into. Locations are spread few and far between, with a lot of needless running around and void space. But unlike Origins and Dead of the Night, which feature many different means of map traversal and set pieces, Desolate Land just sprawls itself out like an Outbreak map, with no coherent level design and means of flow. 9 is flawlessly designed. Once all the doors have been opened, the furthest sprint a player might have to make is from spawn to Pack-a-Punch, which lies directly beneath the center of the map, making the trip feel a lot shorter than it may actually be. This is quite different compared to a map like Voyage of Despair. Without using a fast travel, if the player wishes to run from spawn to Boiler Room, they'll be traveling for about a full 2 minutes. Speaking of spawn, let's talk about the series' best spawn room for a moment, shall we? As the map's spawn and centerpiece, we have the Arena Square. With a challenge podium in the middle and 4 indivisible sections, nearly every player is able to share the spawn room as a separate training ground. To make it a bit harder, however, every even round, the metal dividers will shoot up flames that deal damage to unsuspecting players. These flames also deal no damage to the undead, making it easier for them and harder for you. With over 10 different patterns, the flame jets keep players on their toes, and keep rounds from being too easy. The map design also supports the varied enemy pool, so from talking about the map layout, let's go into our new adversaries. Now let's see, 9 includes a total of 9 different enemy types. There's of course our standard garden variety zombie, a very simple foe who show up in droves. Then there's the 4 elemental catalysts first introduced on Voyage of Despair. These include the water catalyst who can buff zombies with an icy touch. This increases their damage output by 25 and health by 100. The Poison Catalyst, who deal light area effect damage that prevent health regeneration. The Electric Catalyst, who let out a stunning siren of electricity that can blind players. And finally, the Fire Catalyst, who move very slowly but let out a large fiery explosion if players get too close to them. Then there's the Zombified Tiger. Unlike the popcorn style of enemy the dogs in Black Ops 3 became, the Tiger is a significantly tankier foe, and it's considered one of the game's many enhanced enemies. Tigers deal 40 damage with a basic slash, but if a player is not paying attention, they'll rev up and pounce, causing them to deal 100 damage. This can be quite dangerous if a player is already at low health, or if 2 happen to land on you at the same time. Then there's the Marauders and the Destroyers, but much like Shadow Throne's Gekok, who we call the Sizzler, we'll be calling these 2 enemies Brawlers and Gladiators because that's just simply what I know them as. The Brawler is an extremely aggressive enemy. Sporting mangler-like claws in both hands, the Brawler will leap towards players to close distance before attacking with a barrage of wide-range slashes. Unsuspecting players should be careful and attempt to fight this foe at a range. Then there's the Gladiator. While slower than his ally, the Gladiator sports more protective armor and dual-wield boomerang axes, with each axe hit dealing 50 damage each. Funny enough, I've always considered the Gladiators and Manglers to have the exact same coding. Players are able to dismember the 2 enemies in a very similar fashion, drastically changing their attack patterns. Both enemies have very similar armor weak points and plating, and both enemies have gargled voice lines. Gladiators and Brawlers are a force to be reckoned with together, especially considering they both cover the other's weakness very well, while still sporting very large health pools. The saving grace, however, is that the wide level design makes it quite easy to confuse the AI, but don't let them catch you off guard. And finally, there's Voyage's returning Blightfather. Sporting various attacks, the Blightfather is the perfect evolution of the Panzer Soldat and Margwa. The Blightfather can slash at the player to deal 100 damage, launch hordes of wasp, grapple players with its tongue, and fun fact, if the player holds out the shield to block this attack, he'll straight up eat the shield, which is a super cool interaction. The Blightfather can also puke on map interactables, locking them down much like the Warden. It is a force to be reckoned with, causing as much havoc on the field as the developers hoped it would. One of the Blightfather's unique traits, though, is the player's ability to gib the beast and disable its various attacks. If the player shoots his mouth enough times, or shoots his face while being grappled by the tongue, this will disable the tongue lash, the grapple, and I'm pretty sure the Warden puke too. If the player decides to shoot at the spores on his back enough, the beast will be unable to launch long-ranged wasps. This is an extremely dynamic way to have a player interact with a boss, much like how players are able to interact with a Mangler by destroying its arm cannon, changing the way the enemy approaches combat. All of these opponents might seem overwhelming to the player on paper, but honestly it's quite manageable. The wide map design perfectly accommodates for the plethora of enemies, and unlike maps like Forsaken, where the combination of enemies is just borderline terrible, 9 in the World of Chaos do a much better job at making these mismatched enemies slot in very well together. Nothing feels out of place, and the gameplay mechanics like the specialist weapons more than make up for the difficulty by giving players the tools to fight back at the exact same power level all the time. It's why Cold War's best specialist ability is the Ring of Fire. It's the only one that purely increases player damage and allows them to dismember stronger foes like the Megaton and Abomination with ease. Gladiators and Brawlers fight at the perfect speed too. All of their attacks are telegraphed quite well, but allow room for error for unsuspecting players. And while I wish Tigers were a bit slower, it's really cool to see Treyarch come up with a hound-like enemy that doesn't die by simply looking at it. There's not a lot of room for criticism here, because downs feel very fair, and rarely do the enemies place players in unescapable scenarios due to the map's stellar design, unlike many of Black Ops 4's other experiences. And because of the map design, if players go down, regaining your perks is as easy as approaching the tower of the perk you're missing. Now let's talk about that map setup process and subsequent gameplay features. Once players begin a match of 9, they'll be able to interact with one of the 4 challenge banners around the spawn. Doing so will initiate a challenge board, giving players 9 individual challenges. Get it, it's because the map's called 9. Each of these challenges come in different groupings and tierings. The first challenge rewards players with a free self-revive. This is an amazing little feature in both solo and co-op. This gives new players another extra chance in solo, and in co-op, allows teammates to revive themselves once if they so desire, further increasing map replayability, unlike every other BO4 experience, which usually features a much more complicated process to obtain this coveted item. Completing the third challenge grants players the Pack-a-Punch Strife, easily the map's best tool because it speeds up early game momentum as soon as round 4. This is my personal favorite variation of the challenge system. It provides players with easy to complete challenges, but doesn't require them to pay into an RNG challenge system like Cold War. And because of the guaranteed rewards, you'll be able to kit yourself out more effectively, unlike Cold War's more roguelike game design. No, Cold War, I don't want another Pack-a-Punch Sledgehammer, I just want the Cerberus! This Pack-a-Punch gun also provides players with the means to complete the setup easily too. In the top floor of each tower, players are able to interact with a gong to summon a guardian of the tower. These quick encounters can spawn in a gladiator, a brawler, 4 tigers, or a gladiator and brawler together. And because of how early players are able to access these fights, they provide excellent isolated scenarios to get players used to fighting these new enemies that they will soon be encountering a lot more. A process we will begin to see going forward. Like how players would encounter the Disciple for the first time when playing Mallard or Toten and interacting with the Pack-a-Punch, or the Abomination encounter when trying to reach the Observation Tower in Forsaken. As players defeat each Guardian, they'll be given an anointed head. Oh no! And just like the Trials and Shadows of Evil, defeating these enemies provides players with 500 points for each Guardian defeated, making the map setup even easier. Believe me, if a map provides the players with points for completing objectives, it'll instantly become a top tier map. In Shadows of Evil, you get 500 points for completing each of the rituals. S tier map. In Garag Krovi, you get 500 points for completing each of the Groff modules. S tier map. In Firebase Z, you get 500 points for each Ethereum reactor completed. S tier. B tier. In 9, you get 500 points for each Guardian defeated. S tier map.
You fools! Can you not see it? There is a pattern. At long last, there is a pattern to this madness. That I suspected all along, of course. I know what I'm doing.
Once players have received their anointed heads, they'll be able to place them atop the spikes in the altar room to unlock the Uber Spray. I mean the Pack-a-Punch. Yeah, that. And with that, players will have already unlocked most of the map's play space as early as rounds 5, 6, or 7, giving them as much time as possible to get their head screwed on right before the game truly unleashes the chaos. You seriously couldn't ask for a better early game setup, with a fantastic map design that complements the gameplay perfectly. And speaking of early setup, there's the fantastic way the map introduces each of these enemies. As discussed earlier, players come into contact with each of 9 unique enemies while in the towers. But fun fact, there's a completely separate list of rounds where players are introduced to enemies, regardless of completed objectives. So let's go over them, and how they slowly lead players through the rounds and the encroaching enemy variety. Starting at round 6, players are introduced to a single tiger. By round 7, the game will spawn in the first of 4 catalyst types. By round 8, players will be thrown the first brawler their way. By round 9, the player will have to fight 5 tigers in the map's first special round. On round 10, the first gladiator will join the fray. By round 11, the second catalyst will be spawned in. On round 12, the game will randomly decide between a second special round that involves 2 gladiators, or the third catalyst round. And then round 13 will be whatever wasn't chosen for round 12. By round 14, the fourth catalyst will be introduced, and by round 15, the Blightfather will be added to the enemy pool as the last new enemy. And in 10 rounds, you've basically been introduced to every enemy 9 has to offer, making it feel not as unfair once the game finally lets loose and forces you to gather all your skills you've mustered thus far and put them all together. This process works extremely well for inexperienced players, unlike maps like Voyage of Despair, which allow Catalyst to become any of the 4 variety as early as round 6 in co-op and round 9 in solo. This early game setup is fantastic, and it's helped even more by the crowd appeal system. As players complete challenges, kill special enemies, murder the undead, the jeering crowd around them will be swayed one way or another. If players perform positively, the crowd will reward you with power-ups once a round, with a good appeal granting bonus points, an insta-kill, or double points, and a boosted appeal granting players fire sales and specialist recharges. This system is amazing. Players are given a boost if they aren't able to reach the best appeal, and well-performing players are rewarded for their skilled play, with fire sales that benefit the whole team and allow players to experiment with new weaponry, and specialist recharges that grant them further killing potential, feeding into the map's already amazing gameplay loop of power and destruction. Players are able to boost their crowd affinity by killing gladiators, brawlers, Blightfathers, using traps, and completing challenges. Players will also lose crowd affinity if they steal another player's crowd reward, fire grenades into the crowd, get attacked by a tiger lunge attack, have their shield break, run into the fire, or simply spend more than 5 minutes without killing a single foe. This dynamic system is fantastic, and the consistent rewards make the World of 9 and the subsequent Chaos storyline feel more lived in and active compared to Aether's portrayal of locales, which include desolate facilities, factories, and wastelands. It's easily one of 9's most memorable traits, and it perfectly fits the theming and new direction the team have been hoping to take zombies in. Something else I adore is the High Priest quotes. While it's somewhat random what causes them to activate, his appraisal and narration is what boosts this map from good to something truly special. And of course, who could forget the Easter egg? 9's Easter egg is split into 6 distinct steps. The first involves opening Pack-a-Punch. Very easy, but doing so will activate various puzzles around the map for the second step. The majority of 9's Easter egg involves players appeasing each of the 4 specific gods, Danu, Ra, Zeus, and Odin, with each of the gods needing to be appeased by solving a puzzle and completing an action step. The first god that must be appeased is the Celtic goddess Danu. This is easily the egg's worst step, as it requires players to collect pieces such as poop from the crowd and wait multiple rounds for items to settle and permeate. But once players have waited the appropriate amount of time, they'll be able to send into the Danu action step. In a distorted form of the tower, players must purge the blight that infests her tree, while they are attacked by various zombies and Catalyst. The environment starts out as dark and ominous, but once you reach the top floor, you get a gorgeous view of the stars above. Breathtaking, if you ask me. Once Danu has been appeased, players must help Ra next. Ra's puzzle involves hunting down various bull symbols around the map. Once a bull symbol has been located, players must shoot it with their shield to summon a sacrificial gladiator for Ra. Sacrificing 4 of these demons will allow players to activate the Ra action step. Once per round, players will have to interact with the obelisk and kill special zombies in the corresponding order the game demands them to be killed in. Completing this twice will complete the step. Fun fact, if you don't shoot a catalyst to death and it explodes based on proximity, it fails the step. Neato! The next god that must be appeased is Zeus. By interacting with a podium in the middle of the map, players must teleport underground and locate 4 spires in the middle of an underground passage. Doing so will unleash lightning rods and spawn. Getting kilowatt kills or gladiator kills with a kilowatt weapon will charge the spires. Once all 4 have been charged, players can face off in what I dub the Metallic Clash. With the sky dampening, an infinite wave of gladiators, brawlers, and tigers will be summoned into the arena to murder players. To aid them, whenever a player kills one of these enemies with their specialist weapon, it'll be instantly recharged. I can't state enough how much fun this step is. The cacophony of metal bursting, the infinite special ability, it makes you feel like a god, and it's easily one of the egg's highlights. And so far, something we've never seen reattempted in zombies, making this step truly one of a kind. I'd highly recommend the Hammer of Valhalla for this step, as it refills armor per kill, can stun zombies with a Storm Slam, and the Lightning Bolt is good for picking off tigers to recharge your specialist in a pinch. Here, I'll just play a clip to demonstrate what I can't put into words. Tell me this doesn't look cool. Once Zeus has been appeased, players must now take the death of Orion and line up multiple shots that connect symbols around the map to release water valves. Don't worry too much about it, if you know the locations, you know what to do. Once 3 symbols have been shot correctly, players must stand on this panel in the shield room and endure a lengthy onslaught of zombies, catalyst, tigers, gladiators, brawlers, and a Blightfather at the end. Killing these enemies will slowly raise a key hidden deep within this grate that must be used to enter the boss arena. Once 3 waves have been endured, the player will be able to enter the boss arena by taking the teleporter in spawn. In the arena, players will fight a final onslaught of gladiators, brawlers, and tigers. Okay, believe me, the egg makes sure you're able to fight off these enemies by the end of it. But once enough have been defeated, players will be able to fight the map's boss, a giant zombified elephant named Fury. You want to talk about pushing the envelope and trying new things? This boss fight does it in spades. Like, just take it in the sight for a moment.
The Guardian approaches. I give you fury.
What the fuck? How the hell are we supposed to bring that thing down?
Beautiful. To defeat Fury, players must shoot the chains containing her riders. Once shaken off, she'll become enraged and gains the ability to launch a prima materia blast at players. While her attacks are easily telegraphed, the game more than makes up for the gameplay with just pure spectacle. Like, there are times where if she slams down too close to you, you'll just be launched into the air like a balloon. Look at how high you can go. If you want my honest opinion, the boss's actual gameplay is very boring. All the player has to do is to keep moving around the pillar in the middle, while this behemoth of the dynamic force pushes you around the arena. But I'd be lying if I didn't fall in love with this boss for the sheer size and scale it imposes. It's a very similar feeling I get when fighting the dragon in Garag Krovi, or the Keeper in Der Eisendrache. It's moments like these that remind me why I fell in love with Easter eggs in the first place, and 9 is no exception. But once Fury has been slain, the characters are able to take a quick breather before the second elephant appears, Wrath.
Fury has fallen.
Okay, that is it! Let's button up this trial and snap out of this nightmare. Now, please. Oh no. No, no, no.
The Guardian has been slain. Now, behold the champion of the Nine!
What's super cool is that there's a unique animation of Wrath destroying the gate before the Order can properly open it for her. And frankly, that's just sick. Sadly, Wrath plays the exact same as Fury, so all you have to do is just rinse and repeat what you did before to achieve victory. 9's greatest strength is its flawless gameplay, and this Easter egg perfectly captures that feeling with solid steps and fun execution. It's an adrenaline rush from beginning to end, and the boss fight more than caps off this amazing, steroid-infused fever dream of an experience.
It is done! Wrath has fallen! Their champion defeated. The Nine can hide no longer. What once was theirs shall now be ours.
And finally, there's the map's outro cutscene. Once the trial has been completed, the Order will gain the information they need to unlock the doorway of Delphi. While attempting to claim the reward for himself, the High Priest becomes consumed in a prima materia energy, seemingly infecting his being for trying to claim what he didn't rightfully earn. While he screams in pain, Scarlet attempts to fight for the freedom of her team, accidentally revealing information she shouldn't know. Realizing our characters aren't who they say they are, the High Priest demands their execution, as the map ends on a chilling and brutal note. This cutscene's greatest strength is its mystery. Much like what made cutscenes like Origins and Horizon Rock so popular, Craig Houston knows how to keep the audience on the edge of their seat, and keeps them asking questions they didn't know they wanted to ask. Like, what is happening right here to the High Priest? Why are they trying to enter the city of Delphi? Who are the Nine? What were they trying to hide? What is so special about the gateway that they all witnessed? How long has this trial been going on for? We clearly aren't the first competitors to attempt this ordeal. What were the gods trying to hide from humanity? What the heck even is prima materia? How were the Order and our subsequent characters unaffected by the events of the trial, unlike the hundreds of other contestants that were all turned? All these questions and more, we may never get the answer to, but we can always hope, can't we? Regardless, I always find myself on the edge of my seat when watching this cutscene, and Craig and his team knocked it out of the park. And of course, the map thematically ends as it began, through the eyes of the one Diego Nicali. From beginning to end, 9 is a fantastic experience that perfectly blends all of the new aspects of the zombies formula into one large pot roast, with no one flavor overpowering the other. But as much as I like to sing the map's praises, it's not perfect. No map should be, if you ask me. One of 9's biggest weaknesses is the characterization of Scarlet, Diego, Shaw, and Bruno, and its consistency with the storyline of Chaos. Jason Blundell has revealed in interviews that he tries to keep each map as an individual experience that can stand on their own. This is a consequence of the DLC system Call of Duty has been implementing for years. The development team can never be fully sure if players will purchase all 4 DLC to get to know the full story. To compensate, each map and its characters are mostly written without the context of the overarching narrative. It's why our characters in Garag Krovi hardly bring up the consequences of Group 935's destruction after Dreisendrach, even though the city is infested with Group 935 technology. And while not a DLC map, Voyage of Despair and 9 were created in tandem as sister maps. Despite the events of Voyage of Despair happening chronologically before 9, Jason and his team decided the best move forward was to write Voyage of Despair and 9 as 2 separate events that can stand on their own, as the team was unsure which map players would gravitate towards more. Sure, they take place in the same universe, one after the other, but you can play both and get a very similar experience from the characters and the overarching narrative. And in hindsight, this might have been for the best, as 9 is the map more players enjoy, especially considering it's the more casual of the two. This hurts our characters and the world building of Chaos in the long run though. For example, each character has to react to Catalyst as entirely new enemies in both maps, despite the logical consistency of 9 happening after the events of Voyage of Despair, where our characters would have clearly encountered the enemy before.
An electric chupacarne. I would say I am shocked, but, well, I leave the bad jokes to Shaw. Electric zombies? How thoroughly modern.
Hold on. Is that sneaky one over there made out of water? Somebody shoot that water ghoul! Ah! What's up with the blue ones? They seem to be avoiding us.
That blue one looks slippery, like a rat. You know what I do to rats? Their eyes! That little blue rat is making them stronger! Très ingénieux. The water monster reinforce the others, like undead medics.
But because 9 might be the first Chaos map players decide to play, the team had to take that into account when writing the dialogue and character interactions. Very rarely do our heroes comment on their previous adventure, leading to a lot of redundant comments and quotes. But then this begs the question, what makes the events of Voyage of Despair so unique to the storyline, if the team could have written 9 as the story's first map? It makes you think, huh? It's the exact same issue Dead of the Night faces. Dead of the Night, while originally created to be a launch map, was pushed back to DLC 1 because of scheduling issues with the voice recordings for the celebrity cast. Because of this decision, story beats introduced in Dead of the Night became spread out as lore in Voyage of Despair and 9.
I find myself wondering why they weren't at the mansion that night. Are they really my father's closest friends?
So once Dead of the Night was actually released, players already had all the puzzle pieces they needed, making most of the map redundant, and to some, a complete waste of time. This massively affects the writing of our characters. Let's take a look at everyone's favorite nagging, headstrong female lead, Scarlet Rhodes. Scarlet is characterized as a hot-tempered and assertive leader. She seeks little distraction from her goals and reacts violently to changes and deviations from her plans. In Voyage of Despair, Scarlet's rude personality is entirely justified. Her plans to swiftly recover the Odin artifact have been altered and massively complicated. She gets frustrated at her team quite easily, and is overall a massive pain in the butt for them all to deal with. She's rude and acts out even to those that are just trying their best to help her, like Shaw. If you can't provide the immediate answer that she needs, she'll simply write you off.
All this violent insanity and blood-soaked decks aside, I really do hope the captain was able to send a distress message!
Even if he did send an SOS, rescue won't reach us in time. We're on our own, so be useful. And if you can't be useful, go for a swim.
In 9, her personality is quite similar. She's hot-headed and quick-tempered. In many of her conversations with her teammates, she's just as rude as she was in Voyage, making her obviously not a fan favorite 2 maps in a row. Her mean retort with Diego would be fine if she had a more balanced palette of feelings towards Bruno and Shaw.
You're wearing a little more makeup than usual, Scarlet. In all honesty, I think it only detracts from your natural beauty.
Didn't ask your opinion, Diego, but your face painted is an improvement. You should put more on. If you can't find any more paint, use some manure.
Capitalism.
Your dumb face aside, we've got more important things to worry about than how we look. Has the world's greatest spy spied anything useful?
It's funny that you ask. I noticed strange markings on the floor of the chamber where we first arrived. They may have usefulness. Ammo.
If you saw strange markings, why the fuck didn't you point them out to Shaw? He is our linguistics expert after all.
I did, but I don't think he was paying all that much attention. You know how distracted he can get. Now, what was that about his amazing linguistics?
I swear, Diego, I'm not sure if you're playing dumb or if you just are.
I would wager that the symbols and the masks in the crowd are some sort of magic. A protection spell of some kind.
But despite the two respecting her leadership and asking fairly tame questions, she turtles up and gets defensive about her past, often belittling them. Especially Shaw, the only man who still considers her family.
Okay, Shaw. This sure looks like history. That's one of your specialties, right? History? Even if it's just because you're older than Methuselah.
Yes, yes, make a joke about my age. How very droll. History is indeed one of my specialities. This is a gladiatorial arena. Not sure where.
You really want to know what my father said in his letter? Let me give you a nice little nugget of fuck you. My dear daughter, I want you to know that I do not blame you for this, no matter how much you are responsible. Please, live your life.
Oh dear. I kind of see what you mean now.
Scarlet, I know of your father's experiences with the supernatural firsthand. I know of his resolve. I believe he is still alive.
Resolve? Right. Let me tell you something, Bruno. I'm the only reason he didn't squander the entirety of the family fortune on his stupid fucking adventures.
By Ancient Evil, many of those issues get resolved as Scarlet becomes much more friendly in nature and accepting of her team as they continue to go through this perilous journey together. But this base should have been established as early as 9, as the events of Voyage of Despair should have been more than enough for the three of them to prove their loyalty to Scarlet and her plight. But because of the release of the two maps, Jason and his team decided to keep the status quo the same, despite Scarlet's character needing a massive makeover as soon as Voyage was over with. And then there's the other three. Because of 9's simulcast release with Voyage, the other three hooligans don't receive too much change to their character dynamics and relationships. And overall, many of the conversations boil down to just small little stories and parts of their backstories we also learned about in Voyage, with most of their previous adventure being glossed over, as to not alienate new players who hadn't played Voyage yet. Again, all of these issues were remedied in Ancient Evil. The world of 9 and the Chaos storyline are a fun, action-packed adventure that fill every nook and cranny with new insight into this vast experience, but the world of our main characters is a mere copy-paste of Voyage, and some character progression would have gone a long way to make the two maps feel more distinct in an ever-expanding world. Another of the map's unique aspects is its wonder weapon. The Chaos storyline has some of the most unique wonder weapons to date, a fluctuating elemental pistol that rips through the undead like a hot knife through butter, an impressive triple-barrel cannon that sends legions of the undead to their knees, and 4 powerful gauntlets that make the player feel like gods among men. The Death of Orion, while an insanely unique design, is easily the most underwhelming of Chaos's offerings. The weapon has 2 fire modes. Firing a single shot will produce a piercing bolt of electricity that can one-shot the standard horde at medium range, and by firing a charge shot, the weapon consumes an enemy in a rapture of lightning that ensnares any of the undead unfortunate enough to get close to them. While doing so, the weapon drains enemies of their life force and can dispatch wide hordes of the undead after a specific period of time. This is great at holding down choke points and stunning the map's more active enemies. Even the Blightfather can be stunned for an extended duration while using the weapon, making this dynamic target much easier to take out. The weapon sadly lacks the killing potential held up by its brethren. Much like the Wunderwaffe DG2, the prologue time to kill makes the weapon about as ineffective in BO4's high-energy combat, whereas the Wunderwaffe works much better for World at War and Black Ops 1's slower game of play. The weapon's single shot should have produced high-voltage bombs that disintegrate small hordes, like Alpha Omega's Reagan Mark II-Y, with the charge shot still retaining its stun capabilities. Underwhelming is the word I'd use to describe the weapon. It's fine in combat and has a large ammo pool, but that's about it. It's fine. Serviceable if you must, but unlike many of 9's more bombastic features, the Death of Orion is probably not one on many players' minds. The weapon does have a funny glitch though, where if the player spams the reload button while firing, they'll be able to fire a much faster barrage of lightning bolts. Sadly, this quickly diminishes the weapon's ammo count, and it makes you realize how poorly this weapon fares in long-term combat. Genuinely, I am struggling to think of things I dislike about the map, without getting extremely petty, like how dumb the skull search is in the beginning of the Danu step. Seriously, there's a billion skulls in this room, and only one just happens to be the correct skull we need to grind? And of course, who could forget the small things that make or break the experience? 9 is full of tiny little side Easter eggs. For example, throwing a homunculus into the crowd will cause them all to do the wave. And if players collect 3 pieces for the Viking burial and perfectly fire a Wraithfire, they'll be able to earn a free extra perk. Neato. Players can collect pieces to build an acid trap. This is a really cool trap that allows players to place it in one of the 4 locations around the map. All in really cool and efficient choke points too. But why we can't build it in all 4 locations, I'll never know. The round 30 gauntlet challenge for 9 is called In the Room, and you have to complete the map's boss fight. And honestly, I just love that. There are these coins that are placed around each of the towers in the map. Shooting them activates the map's Easter egg song, Mad Hatter. But while the Easter egg hunt was still active, many players annoyed the living heck out of YouTubers day in, day out, telling them that there was a shootable purple coin at the top of the Zeus Tower. And I remember their frustration at the constant question just being hilarious. And oh my goodness, how could I almost forget to talk about the Brazen Bull Shield? It's so cool! Not my favorite in terms of power, but it looks cool. Like, look at the way the darn thing shimmers in the light. Magnificent. Then there's this weird inconsistency with the Tiger Pounce attack. Why does getting hit by this attack lower my crowd affinity? Are you people not excited to see me get mauled to death? A really cool fact about the art direction is that the writing on the elephant is actually the name of the map's director in this Chaos Alchemy language. Okay, and I swear I'm remembering this fact from the Glitching Queen video, and the fact that I can't find the video that I learned this fact from is driving me insane. Diego is the only character to comment on the mysterious purity of the cult and how unaffected they were by the initiation of the trial, and how our characters were seemingly unaffected as well.
As far as I can tell, the jeering crowd appear to have been spared the effects of the poison. As have I. Curious. Very curious.
This is a cool piece of lore and theory crafting that wasn't completely answered until the events of Dead of the Night, and the mystery greatly benefited from 9's release date, even if I'm the only one that found it to be super cool. As players traverse the map and complete the rounds, the team at Treyarch developed multiple different round theme changes that can be altered mid-track by traversing the different areas of the map. Like, listen here, I'll play a few of them. They didn't have to do that, but doing it is what makes a Treyarch map a Treyarch map. And finally, there's always this implication in the boss fight that there are all these seats in the boss arena with an entire crowd of people who could never realistically see the main arena. So are these considered the cheap seats, or are these the premium seats because you might see an elephant fight? It makes you wonder. In conclusion, 9 is some of Treyarch's most flawless work. It's quite clear to see why it's the map most fans talk about when referring to some of the good ideas and maps introduced in Black Ops 4. Objectively, 9 is some of the team's best work, from its easy to pick up and play approach, to a map design that perfectly integrates all of the unique traits and features of Black Ops 4 into one neat package. And while the characters suffer a bit from the game's release, the world of chaos is expertly explored here, and leaves the audience wanting more, compared to the tamer beginnings of Voyage to Despair. And most importantly of all, the map is just fun to play. Whenever I don't know what I want to play, I know I can count on playing 9 and always having a good time. And while nothing is perfect, I guess you could say it's worthy of a 9 out of 10 rating. Believe me, I didn't write this whole video just to make that joke. Thank you all for watching. This was an extremely fun review to make. And it saves me a lot of time compared to the work needed to make a retrospective video. And who knows, I'll probably review the other 7 maps as we go along too. But if you like this video, then I can't recommend enough my other reviews of IW, AW, and World War II, all of which will be in the description. And if you haven't seen it already, I uploaded a companion piece to my IW review covering the Mephistopheles boss fight, so give that video a shot if you haven't already. But with that said, thank you for watching, and remember, keep on slaying.